6 o'clock, so it's time to start the meeting for this evening. So here we are. This is a meeting of the East Herts District Council Development Management Committee. It's taking place on Wednesday, the 8th of February. And before I get to the, well, actually the agenda includes apologies, doesn't it? Yes, okay. So to start with apologies, we've had two apologies. Councillor Fernando and Councillor Page are unable to be with us. I'm very grateful to Councillor Suzanne Rutland-Barsby for substituting for Councillor Page. I'm conscious that Councillor David Andrews is not in the room yet. He's been known to arrive at the very last minute, but he's beyond the last minute at the moment, so we'll see what happens there. So that's apologies. Chairman's announcements. I have no chairman's announcements. Declarations of interest. Ruth.
Thank you, Chair. I have to declare that I had no knowledge of the email that my husband sent out to all the DMC members before it was sent out.
Well, that sounds like a perfectly normal and healthy marriage to me. Thank you for declaring that, Ruth. It's nice. Okay, so we're on to the, by some distance, the main item of the agenda for this evening. This is item 4, which is Gilston Area Outline Applications 319-1045 OUT and 319-2124 OUT. Public speaking arrangements at the Development Management Committee meeting in the diary for the 28th of February. And I'm going to ask Kevin Steptoe to lead on this, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good evening, members. So, yes, as Chairman's identified there, the report that you have in front of you this evening is submitted in order for you to determine the public speaking arrangements that you want to have in place for the meeting that we have in the diary on the 28th of Feb. That is planning to deal with the first of the two outline applications for the Gilston area, the larger of the two. That's 319-1045. That's the application by Places for People for 8,500 homes and associated infrastructure. We've suggested that the arrangements that are set out in the report for you this evening also be applied at a subsequent meeting yet to be determined, date yet to be determined, where we'll ask you to deal with the second of the two outline applications. That's 319-2124. OUT, that's the Taylor Wimpey application for the remaining 1,500 homes, given your total overall in Gilston area 10,000. So, Chairman, the report's in front of you because you will know that conventionally, when the committee meets and considers planning applications, you provide an allowance of 3 minutes for speakers for and contrary to applications, and 3 minutes for the relevant parish council to speak. You've previously considered the arrangements that should be applied for strategic sites, so the strategic sites identified in the East Herts District Plan, and given the significance of those sites in general terms and their importance and the impact that they may have, you've decided previously to increase that to 6 minutes, so you've doubled up the time, 6 minutes to speakers for and contrary, and for the relevant parish council. When you dealt with that matter, you decided that those arrangements were appropriate to be applied to all of the significant sites, all of the strategic sites. That was back in May 19 and April 2021. You felt it was appropriate to apply those to all strategic sites. However, members will recall that when we came to consider the first of the applications relating to the Gilston area last year, in February last year, that was the proposals for the River Stort crossings. On the day of the committee, following representations by interested parties, we increased the speaking time provisions further to 8 minutes, so a further 2 minutes. And for equitability, that was applied to all speakers for, against, and for parish councils. However, when in making that decision, the committee decided that it would be applied to that meeting only. So that was the meeting that dealt with the crossings proposals back in February last year. So the default position, unless you decide to do anything different, the default position is that we default back to the 6-minute arrangements for strategic sites. So that's the background. And the reason why we've put a report together for you to consider and to debate the matter is that we do recognise, as officers who do recognise, that the Gilston area is of very great significance. 10,000 homes, it's by far and away obviously the largest of our strategic sites, a whole range of infrastructure that's associated with it. So we do realise it's by far and away the most significant site. And the implication is that, of course, the impact of the proposals on the existing community and the new community in that area will be very significant. And we feel it is appropriate, therefore, that interested parties should have the ability to articulate their points in front of you at the committee meeting. Now, of course, they will be able to, and they have, of course, submitted representations on the application. They'll be able to submit any further representations. And often once the committee report itself is published, that generates further representations because interested parties want to comment on the content of the report. So, of course, written submissions, lengthy or otherwise, of course, can still be submitted. And you'll recall at a recent council meeting, we've adopted a position where we'd ask for those to be submitted 3 days in advance of the committee meeting to give you sufficient time to be able to read and understand and digest those and seek advice on them where you need to. So we have the ability for full written representations to be submitted still. However, we did feel that on reflection, it was appropriate to reconsider our public speaking arrangements. And you'll see that we've proposed as officers that be increased further to a 10-minute slot. So it'd be 10 minutes for those who are in favour of the application. Often that is the applicant, but occasionally they may be joined by another party. They would share that 10 minutes. 10 minutes for those who are in objection to the proposals. Again, we'd ask all those who want to speak to share that 10 minutes. And then in this case, 10 minutes, a further 10 minutes that's safeguarded solely for the 2 parish councils that are in the main affected by the proposals. So that's Eastwick and Gilston, which is 1 parish council, and Hunsdon, the second of the 2. Those 2 parish councils have been engaging with us as planning authority significantly since the time of the adoption of the East Herts District Plan. They've come forward with their neighbourhood plan. The neighbourhood plan accommodates and supports the delivery of the development in their area. And you can see there's a significant degree of engagement. Now, again, given the unusual circumstances of the application in that it has a very significant impact on those 2 parish council areas, we felt it would be reasonable and appropriate in this case to safeguard that time solely for those parish councils. This is so that obviously they don't have to share that with other parish councils and they get the full benefit of that 10 minutes. And it's probably just worthwhile to add there that the 2 parish councils do work in very close liaison with each other, almost seamlessly, really, I think it'd be fair to say, such that even though there are 2, safeguarded to 2, we are fairly clear that they would be able to maximise the use of that time and agree amongst them how they would do that. So we're proposing 10 minutes solely for those 2 parish councils, and then if any other parish councils wish to speak, there would be a further 5 minutes in addition. So, Chairman, those are the proposed arrangements. We feel that they are a reasonable balance between obviously ensuring that communities and residents can articulate their thoughts, whilst allowing you as a committee obviously to have both sufficient time obviously to debate and seek further information and help your considerations around the applications, but also to ensure efficient operation of your decision making. And by that I mean often a longer period of time does not necessarily mean that points will be articulated in a more appropriate or lucid way for you. So we're trying to make this balance between ability for people to input, to articulate their thoughts, and for you as a committee to reasonably efficiently deal with your business. Chairman, hopefully that's a summary of it. Obviously, I can respond to any members' questions on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Yeah, if I might, unusually, I'm just going to say a few words at the beginning of our debate now. As a committee, we've all been together for quite a long time now. This is a committee that has some experience, and if I may say, I think we work well as a committee. So we know that normally the arrangement is, in principle, that a speaker gets 3 minutes. And I'd like to think everybody in the room now does accept that you can pack a lot into 3 minutes, and actually the existing system for the vast majority of our applications works very well. By the same token, I'd like to feel that everybody in this room now feels that the slightly different arrangements we had for the previous Gilston meeting also worked very well. And the last thing I'll say at this stage is that obviously one of my jobs as the chairman of the committee is to make sure that meetings proceed in an orderly and managed manner. And I think it's quite important that we keep in mind that the people who make the decision, or will be making the decision on Gilston, is us. And it's very important, I believe, that this committee, every one of you, has whatever time you need at the meeting on the 28th to raise whatever points you wish to raise and examine officers as you choose to do it. So my own view is that the recommendations that have been put in front of us this evening and Kevin has just spoken to are right. I think they've got the balance right. I think they've struck a nice balance between showing residents, parishes, etc., that we do understand this is a major application with big consequences, but at the same time leaving us in a position to conduct an orderly meeting when every member in the committee has every opportunity and sufficient time to raise whatever issues they wish to raise. So that's my view. I now just open up to the meeting if anybody's got any further comments. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. I think firstly, I would say that I would welcome, I think we would probably all welcome the extended time given, which is more than 3 times as long as for minor applications and nearly double that for other major applications. We're aware that suggestions have been made it should be as much as 30 minutes for some of these groups. 30 minutes does seem a very long time, and one would think that a lot of points could be made in substantially less. Not absolutely sure about 10 minutes. I think that is, we could regard that as maybe a minimum, given the complexity of the issues involved. And I think it's up to the committee to decide whether that's reasonable or whether even 15 is appropriate, or whether 10 minutes is in fact adequate. All other PCR, some points of clarification, all other PCRs, assume that's for any surrounding parish council that isn't directly involved. I assume that councillors will have an opportunity to speak separately as well, as usual, and what, do they have any time limit on that, or is there none?
I'm just going to let officers deal with that. There may be points there for you, Kevin. There may be points there for Victoria as well. I don't mind how you mix and match. Thank you.
Shall I respond initially? Yes. So the all other parish council representatives of PCRs, yes, in that grouping, we are anticipating any other parish councils in and around the site who may feel that they want to speak. This application is unusual in the fact that the application site area actually encroaches into or is part of 4 parish councils. As I say, that by far the greatest majority is Eastwick and Gilston and Hunsdon, and there's a much reduced amount Widford and much Haddam. is the other one, but very modest by comparison. You know, it's sort of 80% in the two and then 10% in each of the other two. So yes, we're thinking of other parish councils and even those further away from the site who may feel they want to speak. For councillors, for members of this council who are asked to speak, chairman's request, there's no restriction, obviously just you know, suitable, appropriate and suitable time at the discretion of the chairman to make their points.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, and sorry, I'm broken, but the neighbourhood plan was mentioned, and neighbourhood plan representatives do not have a slot on this. It seemed to be being assumed that the neighbourhood plan was something that was part of parish councils. That is not actually the case. Certainly the Ware neighbourhood plan has been prepared. It was made quite clear that it was not an initiative of the town council. It is a separate organisation. It's a separate group led by somebody who is not a member of the town council. I assume that probably also applies to the to other neighbourhood plans, and therefore I wonder if, on principle, the neighbourhood plan leaders should be allowed to have a separate period of time to be able to speak on this and on other applications. So that's something I would like to put forward. And the final point I'd like to make, which is covered in section 2.13 and 2.14, was about a request that was made for further interaction for people who had spoken to have a right of reply. And I think this is a valid question, but it is one that we have raised before in this committee concerning other sorting out factual points or matters of correction. It's been previously decided that that was not appropriate, and so if we were to change it, it would be quite a major precedent. And I thought it was just worth making that point in case people felt hard done by that that request had not been, you know, if we decide not to comply with it, why it hasn't been complied with.
Thank you, Ian. If I might just, as the chairman of our meetings, just respond to the last point you've made, then I'll let Kevin and Victoria comment on the neighbourhood plan point. You're absolutely right. You know, we've all sat in this chamber for, you know, X number of years now, and this is a point that comes up. Of course, our standing procedures are what they are, which is that we don't have a right to reply. I would like to think that our standing procedures have demonstrated time after time that they work, and that we have proper debates, and I think we have a very good debates actually in this committee, and we arrive at justifiable decisions. So for that reason, to start with, personally, I would be reluctant to change that approach. But secondly, there is a substantive issue as to where that kind of stops. Is there a right of reply to a right of reply? Exactly, I think it's very difficult. And one of the reasons unusually I'm speaking as much as I am this evening is because, you know, I think certainly sitting in this seat, I've learned some lessons about managing meetings. It is extremely important that the meeting on the 28th is orderly and enough time remains for this committee to do its work. I wouldn't want this committee to be crowded out of time. I wouldn't want this committee to kind of have the wood and the trees blurred because there is so much noise around the place, as it were. So you're right to mention it, Ian. It's right that we demonstrate to the residents that we're alive to the point. But my view would be that we should not change our normal standing practices on that particular point. I'll just pass. Yes, I'll pass it over to Victoria and Kevin.
Obviously, this evening is literally about the duration of the time for speaking arrangements, not about interaction with members and speakers and officers and speakers. I can give some separate advice on that, but that's not for this committee this evening to determine. It's purely on the duration of speaking arrangements.
Kevin, do you want to say a word about neighbourhood plans?
I was going to come back, Chairman, thank you, on the point about the distinction between the neighbourhood plan group and the parish councils. And Councillor Kemp, you know, it's a good point. And yes, indeed, there is a distinction. The neighbourhood plan groups can be set up by parish councils. There can be differences, but you know, there can be a distinction between them. Certainly in the case of this neighbourhood plan group, we're aware of the representatives on the neighbourhood plan group, and those who represent the parish councils are one and the same. So even though there may be a distinction between them, you're likely to have the same speakers if there was to be separate slots made available. I would say that if a neighbourhood plan, if there are different points between those who have promoted and developed the neighbourhood plan and the parish council, that would have come out, as it were, in the commentary on the planning application to date. And there certainly isn't that sort of distinction. So I would say that even though there is potentially a distinction between the two groups, I don't think it's sufficient merit for you to introduce yet further speaking arrangements. So I think that is covered by the arrangements we're proposing. The other point, I just want to refer to the advice. I've had some advice on legal office about the members of this council speaking. There is indeed a limit, so apologies. There is a limit. There is discretion for the chairman though around that limit. So that was my point. There is discretion for the chairman, but otherwise the limit would be 6 minutes for strategic sites of this nature. And I think really you've sort of closed off that point about further debate with interaction with officers. So I didn't want to go back and say anything more on that. The only other point I was going to make, and I think members are aware of this, that we've had some submissions about longer speaking, and Councillor Kemp there referred to the request for 30 minutes. That's the submission we've had from the Gilston, Eastwick, Hunsdon parish councils, and from local MPs supporting that. So members are aware of that request for actual longer speaking time. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Kevin and Victoria. Thank you. Sorry, the first one I saw was Sally, then Carolyn, and then Ruth.
I just want to be, my battle in my head is quality as opposed to quantity. And when Gilston was seen last time, there were 2 applications. And when everybody fell out of here at 12 o'clock at midnight, what sort of quality time had we been allowed to really discuss? And then I'm aware you've said, I think Kevin said, there's been consultations and opportunities for everybody to interact, ask questions, check on what's happening, this whole process. So why would somebody need 30 minutes to sum up what has been a process for the last 2 years, 3 years? And how fair would it be for councillors who will find that their debate time goes further and further away? I mean, it's like in a court of law. I've seen it done so many times. Enough people talk, the jury gets so confused, they can't make a decision. It's a technique and it can work. And so we're dealing absolutely with what's in front of us, the facts, the debate, the officers' reports. Everybody's had a chance to have consultation, blah, 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 blah. Why would they need, they need to be able to speak, but why would they need 30 minutes? That's my problem, quantity as opposed to quality.
Thank you very much, Sally. It's good to know you got off as well. Well done. I think Carolyn was my next speaker. Thanks.
I certainly agree with Councillor Newton about that, but I also think that 10 minutes is not quite enough. I mean, I would favour 15 minutes, because if you add those all together, all of those timings, you know, we could well end up sitting here for 3 hours just listening to people who, as Councillor Newton said, have already presented their opinions. So I think 15 minutes in favour, 15 minutes for objectors, and maybe 10 minutes for the 2 parish councils and 5 minutes for others. I just think that people who live round and about there need to feel that they are heard, and they need to have enough time to feel they're heard, not feeling that they're squeezed and they haven't had their say. So, I think it's really important that it should be slightly longer than 10 minutes, but certainly not half an hour. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen and Ruth.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've taken the previous points on board, and where I do accept the fact that, yeah, you're right, we do need to have quality, not quantity. And yes, the residents do need to be heard. We have had lots of briefings over the last 2 years, and we've had lots of things. But in fact, the briefing we had last week was actually by Places for People. So the developer had 45 minutes in which to give their side of it. And I just feel the objectors need more than 10 minutes. The residents need more than 5 minutes. If we've given all this time to the developers to explain their side of it in their briefings and presentations, we ought to allow the neighbourhood plan and the others to give their version as well.
Sorry, I'm just looking around the room, not seeing any more hands. Don't think I've missed anybody, have I? No. Okay, so let me. Well, these are just opinions, aren't they? So let me just see what Kevin and Victoria maybe think of what's been said.
Yeah, to the committee to set the time that they think is appropriate. Obviously, we've got to be reasonable, proportionate, and yes, Councillor Newton, Councillor Redmond have made some sort of good points about quality over quantity. If you want to depart from the officer's recommendations, and obviously that's a matter for you, but bearing in mind, are you setting a precedent going forward? Is 15 minutes too much? It's not for me to say. I can only advise that it's a decision down to the committee to set the time.
And my only addition to that, so absolutely agree with that. My only addition to that would be that obviously we need to be equitable, so that whatever arrangements we do decide, we'd apply those equally. So, for example, if it were to be 15 minutes, then I'd suggest that that would be applied to each of the 3 groups. But we've still got this question about other parish councils who may wish to speak. So it might be a case of 15 minutes for each, still plus the additional 5.
Thank you. Tony, I think you wanted to speak.
No. No, Chair. Shall I come back in, Chairman, on that? Yes. Yes. So members, obviously, I hear that the thought about is 10 minutes quite long enough. If we were to increase that slightly further to 15, then we should apply that for each of the categories, each of the main categories. For those who are in favour, obviously, usually just the applicant. For those residents locally who may want to speak in objection, and for the parish councils. But given that we've got this slight unusual arrangement in that the very significant application covers a very large area and the majority of 2 parish councils, we still safeguard that 15 minutes for those 2 parish councils. And then we allow a small additional allowance and suggested 5 minutes. And that remain the same for other parish councils who wish to speak. And obviously this is very unusual in terms of this geographic spread of the application. So the point about setting a precedent is absolutely acknowledged, but it's very unlikely that you'd have any other applications coming forward that would be so large geographically that would ever trigger that sort of arrangement again. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. If I might just come in, Sally, if you look at paragraph 210 of the paper, that just summarises the proposals that are in the paper. Just I know that Tony wants to come in, but just to take stock now, it's my understanding that it's being suggested that the if you just look at 210, the first line would be amended to 15 minutes. Perhaps you could look at this as well, Carolyn, just so we're sure we're interpreting you right. So the first line would be 15 minutes, the second line would be 15 minutes, the third line would be 15 minutes, and the last line would remain at 5. Is that the?
A total of 50 minutes.
Yeah,
if I
right.
put
So
that,
it's
yeah.
15, 15, 15 and 5. Right, fine, okay. So just to be clear on that now, Tony, you wanted to comment.
Yeah, all I was going to say was that looking at the calculation we've got in the paper, you know, it's going to be 45 minutes taken up with speakers because they have to change over. They've got to go and sit down, one comes back, you know, the routine. So if we go up to 15 minutes, we're going to be talking about over an hour of the speakers. And you think about that, we have a presentation by the officer as well. And you think how long it's going to be before we get down to chance to ask questions and feel about where it is. It's going to be over 2 hours. It's worth thinking about that because, you know, we're all human. We start to forget things after a while, don't we?
Thank you, Chair. It might surprise you. After 4 years, I have complete agreement with the officers on this issue. So look, 10 minutes is an awfully long time when you hear people talking, actually. And let's be honest, in the 4 years I've sat here, I think there's probably less than 2% where the comments from objectors brings up something that we've not already read. And they don't need more than 10 minutes to imbue their feelings, really, which is what that conveys, doesn't it? Public opinion.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would say that, I think I've already said this, that is, I believe, my experience on this committee. But we're having a discussion as we always do. It's always a good one. So let's see where we go. I don't know whether any member that's not so far spoken wishes to speak and contribute. There's no obligation on you to do so, but just offering you the opportunity. Suzanne.
Just to say I do agree with Councillor Beckett because you know, it gets a noise after a while. I mean, 10 minutes can give people a lot of bullet points to really drive stuff home that you can note down quickly. But if they go into a half an hour of waffling around, you lose it. And I totally agree. Thank you.
I think maybe we might let Carolyn come back in a second because we're having the conversation's toing and froing. But Kevin's made a point in passing, which is actually very important, which is that we must have equitability. I think that was the interesting word you used, Kevin, between the applicant side and the objecting side. So arguably, when we're looking at whatever is the number on the in effect in paragraph 210 of this paper, you double it because we would have to allow the same amount of time to the opposing view.
How long have we got in total? How long is this thing going to last in total, this meeting? 11 till 6. How much time is actually left between breaks?
If I might start with that, I perfectly understand the question. It's very difficult to answer. Because if you'd asked, I think if you'd asked any of us that question, dare I say, Karen, including yourself, before the Gilston Crossing application meeting started, it wouldn't surprise me if you might have said, oh, well, it's 3 hours. It took a bit longer than 3 hours, didn't it? And to be, I think, absolutely fair to this committee, although it's right to say that we had a very fulsome presentation from Jenny Pierce, the lead officer, this committee is an engaged committee. We debate things. I can't, off the top of my head, think of an issue that's come through this committee and it's just been nodded off in 5 minutes. And if ever there's an issue not to nod off in 5 minutes, this is it, isn't it? So I think the reality is that we will discuss stuff. I think we need time and sort of clarity of atmosphere in which to do that.
Can I just reply? Perhaps it could be a little more than 10 minutes, 12 minutes? I'm coming down. I do understand. I don't want to sit here forever.
It's okay, Karen. I think we all see where you're coming from. And I don't mean to be dismissive of the way you're making your point. I think we all share the sentiment of your point. which is that we want residents to see that we do understand this is a very big application with very, very big consequences. And, you know, we want to be supportive if that is a sensible thing to do. It's just that it is going to fall to us to make the decision. And we do need time to discuss, and we do need an atmosphere that will engender clear thinking and a good debate. So, okay, well, we're kind of, Ben, good man, yes.
Sorry, I'll throw in a thought. I kind of, I do get the concern over the additional time. Going from 10 minutes to 15 is another 20 minutes, I think, overall in the process. And if we're looking at probably, I don't know, 6 hours overall, plus or minus 2 hours, as a percentage, it's a very small percentage, 20 minutes. And what would concern me is if at the end of the day, people feel like they haven't, parish councils or neighbourhood plans, feel like they haven't been able to say everything that they wanted to say. And I think I take the point about, the noise and it starts to blur. And that's a really good point. But perhaps a solution would be just to have a short break after the people have spoken, to give us that space and mental, that's for obviously for the chair to decide. I'm not, but I kind of I would want the residents and the residents groups and the parish councils to feel like they have had a full chance. And for 20 minutes, I just don't, I'd support the 15 minutes.
If you don't mind, if I might just, at least subject to what officers may wish to say, in part respond to that. I think it is important to remember, and in fact, this is the point that Terence has made, that with any application, it's been out there for quite a long time, isn't it? Any interested party has had an opportunity to comment at whatever length he or she may choose to do in advance. It's standard procedure. I think, if I may say, I think Terence probably is right that when we have people, whether they're in favour or objecting or whatever they're doing, and they come and speak to us in person, it is quite unusual that they raise a point that isn't already included in submissions made in advance of us convening as a committee. In a way, one of the things we're circling in this debate is that it is us that makes the decision, and we have to, as we all know, we have to make the decision on planning grounds, not on public outcry grounds. Ian.
Yes, it's a tricky question all round, isn't it? I think Councillor Redfern's suggestion of 12 minutes has merit in that it is exactly double, I believe, the time that is normally allocated to major applications of 6 minutes. So we can say, as a good round number, look, they're getting twice as much time as you would normally get even for a major application, and 4 times as much as for a basic one. And that would seem a reasonable compromise. If it's 12 instead of 10 for the first 3 groups, that gives us an extra time of 6 minutes, given that changeover times will be the same for all. I would have thought that an extra 6 minutes over the period of the meeting is not unreasonable. So that's
Thank you, Ian, very much. I'm looking at officers now, and I'm just going to take the plunge here. Although there's been a difference of opinion expressed on timings, this room is together, isn't it, in terms of the attitude we have towards the residents and the people affected by this. So I'm going to suggest that we go for 12 minutes, and it will be 12, taking the summary in paragraph 210 of the paper, it will be 12, 12, 5. 12, 12, 12, 12, 12, 5. 3 12s and a 5. Sorry, 3 12s and a 5. 12, 12, 12, 5. I'm just going to look around the room now. Okay, so I think strictly we will have to propose that, won't we? So if I propose, by reference to paragraph 210, that the timings be amended to 12, 12, 12 and 5. Do I have a seconder? Peter, if you wouldn't mind, would you allow me to take Carolyn as a seconder, since she kind of led on the point, if it's with your permission? So Carolyn Redfern is seconding. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That was unanimously decided. And can I just thank everybody for a very nice discussion on that, as we normally do. Okay, we do actually have one or two other items on the agenda, but they won't hold us for very long. Item 5 is items for reporting and noting. I take it that we're noting. Item 6 is urgent business. I don't believe we have any. And I'm going to just be a little bit naughty and go back to item 2, which is Chairman's announcements. I'd particularly like to thank Councillor Dumont for coming this evening. It's very much appreciated. Just for the benefit of the viewing public, we have a substitute system here. It's very important that this committee is quorate when we meet. So we have a substitute system, but being a substitute is a funny thing. You only get called upon occasionally. And because of the importance of the Gilston issue, I did ask substitutes to come to this meeting to be present, so they were aware of the conversation. It's very good of Councillor Dumont to come, and we appreciate it a lot. Thank you very much indeed. So with that, at what is it now? 6:42, we've finished.